back to my channel. Okay, so I picked up these two little cute cat monster high dolls recently. I think they're both adorable and I had to do something with them. So I'm going to be making celestial sister dolls because I just love how they're opposites. I think that's really interesting. The doll we're going to be repainting today though is Catrine DeMew, which is the white one. I chose to paint her first because I painted a Spectra doll before, so I have a little bit more of an experience of painting white dolls. I've never painted a doll that is quite as dark as Catrine Noir, so I'm a little bit intimidated, but we'll be repainting her soon. I find Catrine DeMew to be such a gorgeous doll already, so it pains me a little bit to take her apart, but we're gonna. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm prepping the doll, which the first step is to cut off her hair. This doll's head was strangely squishy. I don't know what was going on here, but it made my job a lot easier as I was plugging her hair, so that was pleasant. But anyway, I pop her head off by putting it in a cup of hot water. I normally use the blow dry method where you put a blow dryer on her for a couple minutes. This worked a lot easier, at least for me. It just made the whole experience of getting her plugs out really easy, and I get her plugs out by scraping her head kind of aggressively with tweezers and pliers. She also had basically no glue in her head, which was also strange. Just something I've never experienced before with doll repainting. Very pleasant experience because I didn't have to like fight her head while prepping it. But yeah, so now we're just taking off the paint with nail polish remover. Before I reroot her, I paint her head with black acrylic paint. This just makes it so that if there's any like gaps in the rerooting, you can't really tell. And I made my reroot tool out of an X-Acto blade. I took out the blade and I cut a needle at an edge and then I put it inside the X-Acto blade holder. Alright, so we are rerooting with yarn. So to reroot with yarn, I take apart the yarn and then I plunge the yarn into my doll's head with the reroot tool that I made, and this method was significantly easier than the method I used in my last video. After I get done that, I section off the hair and then brush it out with the cat brush. And just a little FYI, you guys, about the yarn that I'm using. So I live in the Middle East. It's a little bit hard to find yarn, and especially specific types of yarn in the Middle East because it's so freaking hot here. So I ended up using 80% acrylic yarn and 20% wool yarn. You're supposed to use 100% acrylic yarn to make doll hair with. It just made it so that my hair was a little bit frizzier than if I were to use 100% acrylic yarn. After I got done brushing doll hair out with a cat brush, I straightened it with my hair straightener, and then I put the hair in fabric softener. And this just makes it so that the hair or the yarn is a little bit sleeker than if you were to just straighten it, which I think was absolutely necessary because this hair was so kind of frizzy because it's not the right type of yarn. After I got done putting it in fabric softener, I straightened it again. I put a plastic bag inside the neck hole because I didn't want the fabric softener to loosen up the hair plugs inside the head. And I put it inside the fabric softener, let it sit for 10 minutes, and then I cleaned the hair with baby shampoo. I will list all the products that I use for face-ups down below in the description box. And prior to starting the face-up, I spray the doll with 3 layers of Mr. Super Clear. To start, I always sketch out the general shape of the eyes that I want, and I darken up the nostrils and separate the lips. By the way, I'm sorry my big old head keeps coming into frame. I'm trying with these angles for repaints. I just like looking super close at what I'm working on. two types of erasers that work really well are white erasers and kneaded erasers. So white erasers work really well for completely like erasing something, like if you don't like an eye shape that you make, and kneaded erasers work really well for cleaning up something. I gave this doll two different colored eyes because I thought it added to her like celestial, ethereal quality. I add tones of pink, blue, and purple to add dimension to her face. Adding wrinkles to the eyes is something that doesn't really look good on people, but it looks pretty good on dolls. It just gives their skin, you know, just more of an alive quality. I mentioned in the beginning that I worked on a white doll once before, and I find working on white dolls to be a little bit of a weird experience, at least for me, because you sort of expect everything to turn up very pigmented because it's a white doll. However, I feel like I layer up even more color when I work on white dolls because it's hard for things to show up. I don't know if that's just something I experience, but it's something that I've experienced for this doll and something that I experienced on the last white doll that I worked on. And I also find that it's weird because I'm someone who relies heavily on highlighting. I like adding lots of highlights, and you virtually really can't with a white doll because it's white. What are you going to highlight with? I opted out of giving this doll a black limbal ring around her eyes like I normally do, and instead giving her a dark blue limbal ring and a dark pink limbal ring because I just thought it made her eyes look a little bit more glowy. You guys will see me still reaching for my white colored pencil and desperately trying to highlight this doll's skin, but it's basically doing nothing. I add blue and pink tones to the eye whites because I just prefer them not to be a stark white color. Pearlex pigment is a product that I picked up pretty recently. I picked up like a 60 pack of them and I'm obsessed. They make doll skin look so pretty. I give my dolls veins around their brow bone, forehead, and jawline. I decided my doll needed even more pearlex powder because she's a celestial ass beach. One of my favorite steps is adding sharp white highlights going into the iris, and you have to do this, like the trick to it is being very confident and hard with your pencil mark. I love me some lashes on myself and on dolls, and I feel like there's a very fine line with dolls between drawing on too many lashes and just enough lashes, and I frequently cross that line. And I probably did with this doll. So yeah, I'm just giving her a buttload of lashes. I bought a lot of sparkly paint recently because I love glittery things. So I added some to her eyes, but honestly ended up regretting it a little bit. And I added some light pink acrylic paint to her lips and her waterline. I went over her lash line with black acrylic paint because acrylic paint is just way more impactful than watercolor pencils, which is also why I ended up going in certain areas and highlighting with white acrylic paint around her face, because this actually shows up on white dolls. It's like more of a bright white or something than her skin tone. I had little white swirls to her cheeks with white acrylic paint. It's just a stylistic choice that I enjoy adding to faces sometimes. I decided to make this a moon doll, and then the Catty Noir doll, I decided is going to be a sun doll, so she's probably going to have a sun on her forehead. I love Sailor Moons. This was obviously inspired by that, but I am just drawing a little black crescent moon on her forehead, and then going over it with some blue metallic paint. So I've been loving adding chunky glitter to the eye, so I put down super glue, and then I put down a little chunky glitter in her eye. And I just really like the look of it. It's something I've been doing a lot recently with dolls that I've been repainting. And I added some chunky glitter around her moon to look like a tiara. I gave her 2 little braids framing her face. I did this for 2 reasons. 1, I think it's kind of cute. 2, she got way too much hair, and I'm trying to flatten it down a little bit so you can kind of see her ears, because her ears are just completely disappearing behind all that massive hair. I also trimmed her hair a little bit because her ends, much like mine in real life, I need a haircut, were looking real straggly. I add gloss to her eyes and lips. I really like this step because it just makes the eyes and lip color look more vibrant. Hey, so let's talk about clothes. I don't hate something, I just don't know what I'm doing. And if I had it my way, I'd just have some like lovely butt-naked dolls sitting around, but I feel like it adds to the character when you make them clothes, so I'm trying, you guys. I bought this pattern for shorts off of All About Dolls on Etsy, and it was fairly easy to follow for a novice like me. It also had like some other stuff, so it was like, I don't know, it's a useful pattern, probably use it again. But I applied fray check to the 4 pieces that I cut out. I also painted some lace black, as you can see. I did that with really thin down black acrylic paint, and then I like went in with a sponge and tapped it out because I didn't want the paint to look too chunky. But yeah, so I sewed the pieces together and followed the directions, and they looked vaguely like shorts, so that was good. So now we're going to start sanding. Whenever you guys are sanding, you should wear goggles and a face mask thing, because it just getting that stuff in your eye or in your lungs is no good. I got it in my eye before, it sucked. But yeah, so I'm just sanding off the seam lines and scraping them off with an X-Acto blade, and then sanding off the panties and everything. And I'm doing this with like 3 different kinds of sanding paper of different grades. One's really rough, and then like a medium, and then a very smooth one to smooth everything out. Once I'm done sanding, I also go in with a non-acetone nail polish remover. I've seen Poppen Atelier do this. I don't necessarily know if there's much of a difference between when I don't do this and when I do this, but I started doing it because she does it and she seems to know what she's doing. So then once we get done with all the sanding and all the acetone and cleaning and everything, I start to blush the body. So I go in with very similar tones that I used on the face, on the body, and yeah, we just blush everywhere. Again, I like me some veins, so your girl's adding veins to her doll body. I give her a little French manicure with a white jelly pen that I have, and then I put her face back on her body, and it feels so good because I just hate having semi-realistic doll heads lying around everywhere. Like, I feel bad for them that they don't have a body or whatever. So yeah, I do that, and then I cut some wire because I'm going to be making her a tail because she's a little moon cat lady and she needs one. So I'm making hair wefts for the tail, and I do this, and I follow mozekyto's method. If you guys, I'll link her down below. It was really like easy to follow and like super helpful, and it's how I learned how to make hair wefts. So yeah, I highly recommend checking out her doll repainting videos. But I brush out the hair wefts and then I glue them onto a plate. And you may be asking, why are you gluing it onto a plate? Because I have a ton of plates for some reason, so that's what I decided to glue them onto. Once the yarn wefts are finished, I take a weft and wrap it around itself, then I super glue that wrapped up weft together. After that, I super glue that wrapped up weft to the top of the tail, then I wrap wefts around the wrapped up weft and super glue those to the wire. After all that wrapping, I trim the tail hair, and I wanted the tail to look a little bit unruly because I had a black fluffy cat once that I loved a lot, and he had a tail like that. I made a shirt off camera, but it's like a super simple shirt. So I took some shiny fabric that I had, and I did a gather stitch, and I sewed it to the black lace that I painted. In another attempt to flatten her massively poofy hair, I took some pins and I glued some pearls to them, and then I put the pins inside her head near her ears, just to like flatten the hair near the ears a little bit so you can see them, because she's a cat and I want you to be able to see that she's a cat. I also took some super glue and I put 2 trails of chunky glitter on her shirt. I decided she needed some chunky glitter on her body as well, so I did that with super glue too. With my 2-part epoxy glue, I put some glue in her hole above her butt and I attached her tail. Alright, let's talk about these shoes. So they were a little bit of a little nightmare and a learning experience to make, but we made them. So I took epoxy sculpt and I made the sole of the shoes. And this was my first time using epoxy sculpt, and honestly, it was a little bit weird. I don't know, it's not quite like clay, and it was just a little bit difficult for me, but I think it ended up turning out okay. So I wrapped ribbon around the sole of the shoes, and then I took some fabric that was in the shape of a D, and I put that in the front. As you can see, it's the shape of a D. I put it in the front of the shoe, and then I wrapped ribbon around the fabric, and I super glued it all together. After all of that, I had to paint the soles of the shoes black, and I also went over it once it dried with matte varnish. After all of that, it is time to put her clothes back on. So this just feels so rewarding. I also made her some tiny bows for her hair and her tail. I used it's called the fork method, and you can make super tiny bows with ribbon. So I super glued those to her hair and her tail, which you guys will see me do in a minute. And this is the finished doll, and I am so happy with how she turned out. I think she turned out pretty cute. I hope you guys like how she turned out as well. And I think I'm going to actually name this doll, because it's my first time making a character or a doll where I actually have like an idea in mind for it, you know, instead of just kind of throwing it together. And I think I'm going to name her Amaris. So Amaris, according to Google, means child of the moon. And that is either in Old Irish or Spanish or both. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I just thought it was really pretty, and I feel like it suits her. So if you guys like this video, subscribe, it makes me happy, and I hope you guys are having a beautiful day. Bye!